By a perversion of justice, he was taken away. Who could have imagined his future? For he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus is identified with the suffering servant, an enigmatic character who appears in the middle section of Isaiah in 4 servant songs. What we heard this evening was the final servant song. On Good Friday, by participating in the Passion, we find ourselves identifying with the various characters. Thank you to the youth for your dramatic reading and for giving different voices to the different characters. Today we are participating in the Passion on Good Friday with Christians around the world and across the centuries. And this year the Orthodox and the Western Easters coincide. Before I go on, I want to reject upfront the enmity of the original Johannine author for those who he refers to as the Jews, which we changed in our Passion to the Judean leaders. The Gospel of John was written late in the 1st century, a time when Christians were being driven out of synagogues for professing Jesus as the Messiah, which made them vulnerable to Roman investigation and persecution. Yet even if the author wrote in the times in which they lived, there have been disastrous and entirely un-Christ-like consequences for Jews over the past 2 millennia. And for this, we repent tonight. But among the many characters, at the center of the Passion is Jesus, who freely lays down his life and is glorified by being lifted up on the cross to radically transform our relationship with God and with the world. Jesus stands in solidarity with the least and the lowest. He accepts being a scapegoat in the power politics of his day. Listening to the Passion and participating, we cannot help but be affected. Like Genesis, the Passion begins in a garden. Judas, who was a trusted friend and disciple, becomes possessed by Satan. And late Thursday night, Judas brings police and soldiers to arrest Jesus with weapons and torches. They arrive after dark to arrest the light of the world. When Jesus says, "I am," the divine name of God, the police and soldiers fall to the ground. And then they get up and they arrest him anyways, following orders. Peter attacks, responding with violence, but Jesus tells everyone to put away their swords, and he gets the soldiers and the police to let his disciples go in peace. And they flee. And after this, the drama alternates. There's an inside, outside, back and forth. First, Jesus is brought bound to Annas, the former high priest, the father-in-law of the current high priest, Caiaphas, the one who suggested it would be better to have one person die for the people. Outside, in the courtyard, we hear Peter's first denial to the woman at the gate. Inside, Annas tries pulling Jesus into an entrapping conversation. Jesus replies, "I've spoken publicly, openly, not secretly." And then he's beaten for his lack of respect. Jesus asks Annas to testify to the wrong. Instead, he's sent to the son-in-law. Outside, Peter denies knowing Jesus a second time to the crowd who's gathered, and then a relative of the man who was attacked by Peter confronts him. And sensing retaliatory danger, he makes a third denial and exits before the cock crows. On Friday morning, Jesus is brought to Pilate, the Roman governor. The high priests stay outside, starting a second inside-outside drama, with Pilate going back and forth between Jesus and those wanting to kill him. Pilate asks the high priests, "What is the accusation?" but quickly realizes Jesus is not a criminal. Yet the request is to execute him. Inside with Jesus, Pilate asks, "Are you the king of the Jews? What have you done?" Jesus answered, "I came to the world to testify to the truth." What is the truth? Pilate fumbles. Throughout the interrogation, Jesus is in command. Outside, Pilate declares, "I find no cause against him. Shall I release him?" "No, Barabbas, a zealot or an insurrectionist." So inside, Pilate had Jesus flogged, a terrible torture that sometimes caused death. Soldiers dressed him as a king and mocked him to show that he is no threat against Rome. But still the people cry, "Crucify," because he claims to be the Son of God, code for a direct threat to the emperor, who is called the Son of God. Going back inside, Pilate asks Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gives him no answer. Pilate declares, "Don't you know I have the power to save you?" Jesus replies, "You have no power." Outside, Pilate again tries to release Jesus, but the people say, "If you release him, you are no friend of the emperor." And again, he brings Jesus out, but the cries continue, "Crucify him," until the leaders betray God and declare, "We have no king but Caesar." Pilate extracts the price that he needs to maintain his own power and condemns Jesus to death. The decision to destroy Jesus was a political one, not a judicial one, resulting in a public execution for Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, written in Latin and Greek and Hebrew for all to read. His mother and Mary Magdalene and other women and the beloved disciple stood beside him until Jesus uttered, "It is finished." The same words used in Genesis when God finished the work he had done in creation. Declaring completion, Jesus gave up his spirit. The political and religious leaders of Jesus' time thought they had broken his power over the people, scared off his followers, ended his influence. In the Passion, we confront our own powerlessness against evil. The early Christians and Christians who lived in dark times in history, facing persecution, oppression, and plagues, have strongly related to the Passion and the crucifixion of Jesus, who confronts evil and suffers to save us. Throughout Lent this year, I have felt overwhelmed by dark forces I see in the world today. Wars without end, arrests without due process, hatred of neighbors, lack of care for the lost and the least, power, politics, and perversions of justice. And at some point it got under my skin. It got into my heart, crushing my spirit. I could feel depression and despair creeping into my soul. And I prayed deeply to God. And I gave Christ my fears and my anxieties. And then I realized that what I was experiencing was more than just a response to the world. It was a crisis of faith. Do I not believe that God is more powerful than the rulers of this world? I do. Today we are called to keep the faith, even if we're floundering and afraid. Today we are called to stand with the suffering, even if hope feels lost. The good news of Good Friday is that Christ is in control.